After the firefighters that extinguished the fire of a building in the Altona district of Hamburg started to look for possible fire sources, they encountered something that no one was prepared to see. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Ivy Barr and this is my new series called Cup of Crime. If you're obsessed with true crime just like me, then I highly recommend you make yourself a nice cup of coffee and subscribe to my channel as I'm planning on releasing new videos every week. Friedrich Paul Honka was born on 31st of July 1935, which makes him a Leo. He was born in Leipzig in Germany as the third of 10 children. His father Fritz Sr. was a joiner and his mother Elsa worked as a cleaner. 3 of his siblings died during birth. I'm gonna call him Fritz in this video because it's easier and it's just shorter for Friedrich. His childhood was not a happy one. Shortly before the World War II started, both him and his dad were imprisoned in a concentration camp, which was mainly due to the father's political activities in the ranks of the German Communist Party. The camp where they were imprisoned was liberated in 1945 by the Red Army, and after the war, the family returned to Leipzig. However, the alcoholism and the stay in the camp had a huge impact on Fritz Sr., which led to his death in 1946, so just a year after he was freed. After his death, Elsa decided that she couldn't take care of all the children by herself, so she placed them all in an orphanage. Fritz wanted to be a car mechanic, but he was doing really bad in school and his low grades closed this path for him. In the early 1950s, Honka started an apprenticeship as a bricklayer, but he had to give it up because he had a concrete allergy. He then moved to a small village called Brockhöfe, where he worked as an unskilled farm worker. There he met a woman called Margot, and they had an affair together, which resulted in Margot getting pregnant. They had a baby boy who they called Heinrich, and Fritz had to pay alimony for the baby. He had to pay 3,000 German marks, which was the currency back in the days in Germany, although probably most of you know that currently it's actually euros. Honka then decided that he had to leave the village and he moved to Hamburg in 1956. There he started to work as a harbor worker in a company that is called, and let me read that, Hauwaldswerke Deutsche Werft. And the same year he had an accident which resulted in him having a smashed nose and a pronounced squint. In 1957, Fritz married a woman named Inge, and they had a son together too, who they called Fritz. However, the marriage ended in 1960. Neighbors of the couple remember from that time that there was a lot of screams and violence in their flat. The couple reconciled, but they ended their relationship for the second time in 1967. Fritz was a short man because he was only 5'5" or 168, and he was extremely sensitive about his height. As I previously mentioned, he had a squint, which was a result of this accident that happened to him, and he also had a speech impediment. He only liked when the women that he was dating were shorter than him, and what is more, he liked them to be toothless. And that is because he had this phobia and he was really scared of getting mutilated during oral sex. Because of his looks, his lack of confidence, his troubles with aggression and alcohol, Fritz didn't really have any luck meeting women. Shortly after the split with Inge, he moved out of their old apartment and he moved to Zeissstrasse 74. Soon after that, he became a regular at some pubs in the Hamburg's red light district called St. Pauli, and his favorite pubs were Der Goldene Handschuh, which means a golden glove, but also Hong Kong and Elbschlosskeller. In pubs, he was known under the nickname Vierte, and other pub regulars remember him as being quiet, very calm, very self-conscious, and withdrawn. Fritz began using services of older prostitutes that he met in the bars, and that's how he met his first victim. I'll try to pronounce her name right in German. If it's not, then I apologize. So, her name was Gertraud Breuer, and she was 42 years old. Honka invited her to his apartment in December 1970, and she went with him. However, she refused to sleep with him, and in a drunken amok, he attacked her and he strangled her. Experts estimate that he had about 4 per miles of alcohol in his blood at the time of the attack because he claimed that before it happened, he had drunk 6 liters of beer, a quarter of vodka, and a liter of cognac. So he was extremely drunk. After he sobered up a little bit, he decided that he had to get rid of the body. So he tried to drag it out of his apartment, but it was too heavy for him and he fell down the stairs. After that, he changed his mind and he decided that he had to actually dismember the body with a saw, and he proceeded to do that. Her head, her breasts, and her arms with hands, as well as her left leg, were wrapped in newspapers, and Vieta then took them out and left them in a garbage dump, which was in a former chocolate factory in the Altona district of Hamburg. Her right leg and her torso were hidden in Fritz's walls in his apartment. The body parts abandoned in the landfill were discovered in November 71 by a worker who burned garbage there. The police investigation came to a dead end because of lack of evidence, and Fritz wasn't even a suspect. Fritz first became known to the police in August of 1972 when his then partner, Irmgard Albrecht, I believe was her name, accused him of beating her and trying to rape her. Fritz was only found guilty of beating her, and that is because when he actually did that, when he attacked Irmgard, he had about 2.7 per mile of alcohol in his blood, and the court found that he was too drunk to be held responsible for the attempted rape. He was then sentenced to a fine of 3,000 West German marks in April of 1975. The second murder took place in August of 1974. The victim was 54-year-old Anna Boyschel, who was a prostitute from the St. Pauli district of Hamburg. The pattern here was very similar to the first murder. The couple met in the Golden Globe bar, after which they went to Fiere's apartment where they had sex. Fritz got really angry that she wasn't very engaged in the intercourse, and he strangled her because of that. Then he dismembered her body with a saw, just like the first time, but this time he hid all the body parts in the floor of his apartment. Soon the stench became unbearable and his neighbors started to complain, but he said that the smell was just because of the Greek immigrants that were living in the same building and that it was the smell of them cooking their dishes. Honka committed his third murder in December the same year. His victim was 57-year-old Frida Roblick, who was also a prostitute. Honka killed her because he noticed that she stole 200 marks from him even though he paid her for sex before. He dismembered her body just like he did before. He put it in plastic bags and hid them in his apartment. The fourth and last murder took place in January of 1975, so just about a month after the third one. The victim this time was 52-year-old Ruth Schult, and she called Fritz a hobo and a pig, which made him so angry that he decided to smash a vodka bottle on her head, and then he strangled her. Now let's move a tiny bit to the future. It was the night of July 17th, 1975, and it was around 3 a.m. when an alarm was sounded in the fire station in Ottensen. That is because a witness noticed that a multi-story family building at Zeissstraße 74 was on fire. The first fire trucks came to the site very quickly, and they also managed to save a resident from the apartment. The resident was a Norwegian sailor, and as it turned out, he was actually the reason behind the fire because he refused to pay his electricity bills. So the electricity was cut off, and he wanted to illuminate his apartment, for which he used a candle. But then he didn't extinguish the candle before going to sleep, and that's what started the fire. Anyways, the fire was fairly easy to control, so the firefighters then moved to searching the building for other possible causes of fire. They focused largely on the ceiling that was dividing the second floor apartment from the attic apartment. And I haven't mentioned that before, but the attic apartment is exactly where Fritz used to live at the time. When they were doing their work, several of firefighters started to complain about this horrific smell of like rotting meat that was coming from that ceiling and also the attic apartment walls, as it seemed. So they started to tear it down. They tore down some of the walls and the floor. And that's when they discovered two plastic bags with rotten human flesh inside. They notified the police at 5 a.m. that morning. And soon after that, the Kirpo and Hamburg investigators came to site. They confirmed that this meat, rotting flesh, was in fact of human origin. After that, they started an even more thorough search of the apartment and they found plenty of toilet cubes, which I guess were supposed to help with the smell. They also found pornographic magazines and a lot of women's clothing. Finally, they also found the bodies of four dismembered women under the floor and also in the walls of the attic apartment. While the apartment was under investigation, a man entered the building. Soon he found himself at the door of the attic apartment trying to get inside. The astonished policeman asked him who he was, and he immediately admitted his name was Fritz Honka and he was the tenant that lived in that apartment. He was just a night watchman who was coming back from work from his shift. Obviously, he was immediately arrested and taken to the police station for questioning. The interrogation lasted around 2 weeks and it was conducted by two Hamburg homicide investigators. The trial began in November of 1976. At first, in July, Honka pleaded guilty, but he then withdrew his testimony, saying that he didn't actually remember anything. The prosecutor's office claimed that the main motives for the crimes were his pathological hatred towards women and this need that he felt that he had to control them. The defense focused on how the heavy alcohol abuse and the traumatic childhood affected the man, and that he started mainly killing because of this health and social reasons. On December 20th, 1976, Fritz was found guilty of the murder of Anna Boyschal, his second victim, and he was also found guilty of 3 counts of manslaughter. That is because when he was committing those 3 acts, he actually was so intoxicated that he was found not to be fully responsible for them. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, after which he was supposed to be transferred to a psychiatric hospital in 1993. So, just about 17 years after the sentencing, Honka actually left the hospital due to health reasons. He changed his name to Peter Jensen and he was placed in a nursing home. He died on the 19th of October 1998 in a hospital in Hamburg. Heinz Strunk wrote a novel called The Golden Glove in 2016. It tells the story of Fritz Honka, and the title refers to one of the bars that the man used to go to and where he met his victims. Then a German director whose name I believe is pronounced Fatih Akin acquired the rights to the novel and he made a movie adaptation which was released in 2019. Fritz is played by actor named Jonas Dassler. Now, I watched this movie and I have to tell you, in my opinion, it's brilliant. I really enjoyed it. I liked the acting, but it's also extremely graphic and it's just heavy. It makes you feel heavy. It's not an easy movie to watch. If you're not a fan of gore scenes, I really wouldn't recommend watching it. However, one interesting thing is that I've read that the apartment in the movie where Fritz lives, so the famous attic apartment where the victims were killed and where their bodies were hidden, is perfectly reconstructed in the movie. So if you watch it, you can see how it actually looked like in real life. That is everything that I've got for you today. What do you think about this case? Do you think that Fritz's sentence was fair? Do you think it was alright that he was released from prison and from the hospital and he just spent the rest of his days in a nursing home? Or was he just a victim of a very traumatic childhood and alcohol, which led him to commit all those horrific crimes. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments, and also feel free to give me any recommendations for other cases that I could cover in the future. Thank you very much for watching. It really means a lot to me. Please stay safe, take care, and don't be afraid to speak up for yourselves. I will see you soon in my next video. Bye.